Support for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
Tumblr,
ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com,
and Gmail.
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com.
Right.
And from listeners like you. Thank you.
And my free time.
Got to get that in there. Well, rain, go away, come again some other day. Or, hey, maybe if it's rainy where you are, that's okay, because for what we do here on this particular show, no matter what it's like outside, we have got ourselves a jam-packed episode of Arthur to discuss here on Elwood City Limits. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the podcast. My name is Will Young. With me, as always, is my co-host, Lucas Mancini. And Lucas, well, it's funny the connections that you make in life. Just about a year ago when we were starting this podcast, I was wondering, how are we going to get podcast art? If you're going to make it on iTunes, you got to have some kind of art.
Yeah. And we're not going to make it ourselves, because if anybody watched our Zabooma Dudes episode and saw the art that I whipped up in MS Paint,
and I am somehow even
for a professional
worse.
podcast.
But it turns out that Lucas is friends with a very, very talented individual, not just in Photoshop, but in, well, I believe what he does now for a living. I'll have to ask about that in just a second, because joining us for this episode of Elwood City Limits, it is YouTuber Nitro Rad.
Hello. Thank you. You flatter me too much.
No
Seriously.
way, dude. I was just saying to you off mic, I've been a fan of yours for a couple of years, and it's super cool to see somebody from our neck of the woods make it onto videos. Our previous guest was from all the way over in America, but no, it turns out that talent can come from anywhere else in the world and anywhere else in Canada. So welcome to the show. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, you really don't see a whole lot of people doing stuff out of Nova Scotia. Like, I think the one thing that we're really known for is Trailer Park Boys, and we don't really extend much past that.
Yeah, it's true. And I actually have a friend of mine who doesn't like the Trailer Park Boys, and so living here in Nova Scotia... Oh, really?
I don't either. No,
okay.
I cannot stand the Trailer Park Boys. I've never been on board with that kind of humor. And I get a lot of people, they try to tell me that they like it because it's very relatable. If you live in the Maritimes, especially for like people out in like Bumville, New Brunswick, but like, no, I just never really, never really caught on to me. Never really clicked with me.
That's interesting.
Oh, Nitro Rad starting his appearance on the podcast off with some regional Canadian beef. I'm sure all our New Brunswick fans appreciate it. I'm sure, and I'm sure all the Americans are like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
I think that's still a thing in the States, isn't it?
No. They know Trailer Park Boys. I don't think they know the difference
absolutely
between maybe,
not.
Let's say,
no, not at all.
No,
not at all.
It's also a big thing over in the UK as well. I know a lot of UK people who quote it and really like it as well. But that's interesting.
Really?
I mean, I just assumed wrongly, I guess, that the default is that Nova Scotians generally like Trailer Park Boys. But so James, or I should say, maybe I should establish, is it okay if I call you James?
Absolutely. I would probably prefer if you call me James.
All right. I was thinking about it, and I'm like,
we have a Mr. Nitro Rad.
if it's on Twitter, I'm Nitro Rad. But if we're talking,
come to the stage,
not face to face, I guess, in this situation. But otherwise, James will do.
Very well. Good. I was like, I don't know if I want to call him Nitro Rad every time. Do I shorten it to Nitro or do I shorten it to Rad? James,
no, you're not the first one. A lot of people get that way.
Very good, James. It is. So James, of course, you've got your Nitro Rad YouTube channel, which I'm a big fan of. You've also got Garanicore, which is your kind of more Mega 60
real channel,
your Mega 64 style comedy sketches.
Yeah, that's where the realness. That's
that
where all
channel actually started,
real content goes on.
With a big influence from another channel called Man with 10 Toes, which was kind of like basically what Alex and I were doing the first time when I first got an HD camera, just like really, I guess we still really do the same thing, just stupid bum ass, like less than a minute, nonsensical, quote unquote sketch comedy. And that's what those guys did. And yeah, Alex and I really liked that guy, and that kind of influenced our work back in the SD camera days when we were filming stuff in 480p, or I don't even know if it was 480p. It might have been like less than that, but anyway, yeah. Then it kind of evolved into as we started putting more production value into like the obviously the camera quality got better, and I started learning After Effects in college. I just wanted to do stuff that had like better production value. Then we started gradually drawing more inspiration from Mega 64, especially when we started doing more video game related stuff, especially stuff about like Metal Gear, and we did that like Final Fantasy video, not to the extent where it's like a commentary on like current, not like politics, but news surrounding about video games, but kind of just like something silly based on something video game related.
So, James,
I love Arthur.
what do you think of Arthur?
I grew up watching a lot of Arthur. I watched it last night.
Yeah, and have you watched it recently?
Other than that, watching it so last night.
Stupid
For
question.
this episode. Every now and then I'll watch a couple of old Arthur clips on YouTube, because I don't know if every episode's on YouTube, at least none of the newer ones, but yeah, a lot of Arthur content is on YouTube, and I will end up stumbling upon it now and then, and I'll rewatch it, relive the memories. There's a lot of episodes of that show. Like, I don't remember many of these episodes when I kind of get into that rewatching Arthur, but yeah, sometimes I'll stumble upon it and I'll give it a look-see.
Yeah, of course, we're still relatively pretty close in age, so right around that time, Arthur would have actually probably been hitting some of its really, really classic episodes. We've been finding, Lucas and I, that Season 2, it's a little bit of a hit-or-miss season, but I was thinking today, actually, while I was at work, of like an episode that I know is coming up in a couple of seasons that I'm really excited to get to, and that's not an isolated incident either. But before we get there, of course, we are still in Season 2, and we're talking a brand new pair of stories. And James, very, very good to hear that you're an Arthur fan. I mean, wouldn't have you on the podcast if you were anti-Arthur or anything like that. Okay, so today, I'm glad, James, you're actually a little bit more on the ball than me. I watched this episode about an hour ago, so it's way fresh in my mind. Yeah, it's new job and everything, so that was the one spot that I had between dinner and this podcast was, all right, I got to watch this episode so I know what I'm talking about. So we've got, first off, our first story is Love Notes for Muffy. And it actually starts out at a science fair. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys went to the same school, yes?
Yeah.
We went to the same elementary school.
Yeah,
and
we did go to the same
high
school because you went to a different junior high school.
Yeah, that's right. And I cannot recall any time either of us participating in a science fair.
I've never really done anything. I don't even think I've really done anything extracurricular like that outside of like theater. But anything like science or mechanical related, anything like regarding building anything, I never really took much part in.
I mean, I kind of remember back in the day, like, doing one of those projects where you got the piece of Bristol board, and we see this, so we open up on all the Arthur characters, and they sort of have all their science fair projects set up, and it's the classic, like, if this was going to be like an 80s sitcom, someone would have a volcano, and it would be filled with, like, baking soda or whatever, and it's got the piece of Bristol board. I think in a lot of newer cartoons,
they still kind of show, like, the one kid with volcano. That's just one of those staples of, like, what you expect to see in a cartoon science fair.
But in IRL, I don't think I've ever seen a volcano, nor an actual, like, science fair with ribbons and first prize, and that might be more of an American thing. Why, Will, have you participated in a
definitely not science-minded. I was hoping that one of you two would be, but I guess I'm out of luck there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've even seen volcanoes in science fairs even as recently as the latest Fantastic Four movie, yeah. I regret seeing the rest of it, but I remember that thing. Yeah, so it is indeed a science fair, and we get a look at a couple of different exhibits or projects, I guess you'd say. Got a kick out of Binky's, which is Rocks Near School. This isn't so much a science thing as it's almost like an art installation. It's literally called Rocks Near School.
I think it's more like a Binky thing.
Yeah. It's I call this Rocks Near School. These are rocks. I found them near the school. Thank you. I couldn't help but noticing that Rocks Near School gets 2 check marks from one of the judges.
The guy's like, "Yep, those are definitely rocks. They look like they were near the school."
Their
Check
criteria
and
might.
check.
I'm guessing their criteria probably surrounds more like how accurate it is rather than like how ambitious the project is. So as long as he's right, why not?
Well,
Yeah, he's got one checkbox that says rocks Y/N, and he circled Y. And then the other checkbox says near school. Y.
Well, he is
/N.
breathing.
Check the
Check.
Y once
He
again.
is under 10 years old. Check. All right. Well, we're through here. And then we get one that is entirely on the other side. Arthur is actually very successful with his. He's got a new vitamin mixture for his plants, and it looks like he's turned himself into poison ivy here.
It's funny, like, after Binky's project, we basically take a jump where, like, you'd think this would be one of those things where it's like, oh, everybody's project sucks, everybody made a volcano except for, like, the brain because he's supposed to be some sort of technical genius. But all of these kids have, like, pulled off these great feats of science, starting with Arthur, like, engineering some sort of, you know, plant formula that could possibly solve hunger with the rate these plants are growing. And then we kind of transition into... you know, Francine has uncovered some sort of grave scandal with how unnutritious the school food
Comparing
is.
it to a shoe, it has more protein or something in it.
But
this is one thing I always really respected about Arthur is while any other cartoon would just like all these science projects only have to be like background information because they're not part of the main plot whatsoever, but they kind of took this as an opportunity to kind of put in a lot of really funny jokes. Like the idea of Arthur being smart enough to do this like is so absurd, while like any other show would, like you said, it would just be like volcano, you know.
Yeah, and I really respected Francine's thing too. That's like almost more investigative journalism. And we've noted before, James, that Arthur is certainly very good, maybe a lot more so than any kids shows at the time, of inserting humor where you least expect it, sometimes at the expense of the network that it's on, which we very much appreciated.
I know Simpsons did that a lot since they were on Fox, but I mean that's pretty unexpected from a children's show.
Yeah, absolutely. It always catches us off guard because we're like, oh, this isn't what they're supposed to do. It's transgressive almost in a way. And then the brain has basically, is it like a self-erasing chalkboard?
Yeah.
Yeah, except
Brain
he's going to get
invented the
scooped by
smartboard.
marker boards in a good couple of years.
those-
I was thinking that. That was the first thing on my mind when I saw that. It's like, no, we don't need chalk anymore. It's like, sorry, brain, but someone else kind of solved this problem. One thing I always thought, this always bugged me as a kid, in the show's introduction, like, Brain's supposed to be the smart kid, right? But he's the one that sees, I'm sure you know that scene in the intro when Ratburn swims by and Brain thinks it's a shark fin.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, what kind of shark is brown and would be in a swimming pool? Like, you're supposed to be the smart kid. What are you doing?
Well, we have established, James, in a previous episode that Brain is scared of the
Okay.
water, so he might be thinking extremely irrationally by, like, because if I remember correctly, like, doesn't Mr. Ratburn, like, blow water out of his mouth or something, and it
don't
kind of
think so.
splashes them, or I
But
might be
that is a good explanation.
misremembering,
That
but
does make a lot of sense.
Well,
Brain
it's
is,
funny how, you know, Brain, even by his name first, meeting him, you assume he's kind of the smart guy, but he's kind of becoming known for some different stuff, and especially in this episode, because immediately after the science fair is over, Brain and Francine are kind of down in the dumps because the final one that the judges saw was Muffy, and she's got like what looks to be essentially like an easy bake oven where she's made French pastries, and she's talking about, you know, fabric and stuff like that. And Brain's just dejected because he figures that'll win her the whole thing, and bribing the judges will get her the science fair. And so he has very little faith in the judges and them doing their job, and so he just immediately plots revenge. And that's kind of the undercurrent of this episode, is I guess the more undercurrent of negative aspects that Brain has. Like, he's a very vindictive person, and he sticks to this for a while.
I thought it was really funny that, like, they haven't even declared who won yet, and just based on, like, this one little idea that maybe she might win because she's, quote-unquote, bribing the judges, he completely lets this explode in his mind and gets so angry about it, even though he has no reason to whatsoever.
And
it's like a switch is flipped with his character, too. Like, you talk about, like, a darker undercurrent to Brain, but this is, like... I think that's what they were going for, but he becomes so over the top, and it's hilarious. Like, his manner of speaking completely changes for the rest of the episode. Like, he turns into a completely different person.
I think it's Francine. She says, "You seem different today, Brain." He goes, "Really? Do I?" And he just does this maniacal, like, ridiculous laugh that's completely out of place, and
yeah, I suppose it's not the most accurate representation of Brain's character from episode to episode, but I guess it's just the depths that one man can go for the sake of revenge, which is pretty heady stuff for an episode of Arthur. But
They're in grade 3?
Grade 3, yeah.
So, speaking of plotting the revenge, Brains starts coming up with schematics about how he's going to get back at Muffy. His first idea is to
turn her teeth green. He wants to build a device
they
and build
don't
pipes
say it's
inside the walls of the school that'll like pump this green dye into the water and like flip the switch right when she drinks from it, so it'll dye her teeth green. And then he tosses that away. He tosses that away. He goes, "Nah, this."
And also. Right, the reason he doesn't want to do that is because it's too simple, even though it would involve, like you said, like completely revamping
almost
like
as if the idea of turning someone's teeth green, that's like, what's too simple and not the process to achieve that.
Well, it's funny because in both of these examples that Brain gives of like his revenge schematics, it's kind of, you notice that he kind of, I guess, overestimates his own intelligence because, like you said, James, it's like he's just like too simple, which when you really think about it, that's not a simple plan at all. And then his other one
I don't think a kid in grade 3 could achieve that. Even like getting the materials to achieve that.
Yeah, that requires like building permits and stuff.
You have to go to like Canadian Tire, another thing the American audience is not going to know or talk about it. Canadian Tire or like Home Depot to like buy all that. Where's a third grader going to get the money for all that?
And then his other plan is that he wants to build a giant magnet that will like suck Muffy up with like her bicycle. But then in his schematic, it like also attracts like passenger trains, like commuter trains, and so he's just like, I could build a magnet so powerful that it will also cause trains to derail, and then he scraps that because it's too complicated. I mean, he really does think quite highly of himself, and I think that's a fun way to literally illustrate it as he's drawing these in like stick figure fashion.
Well, he is a third grader after all, so I highly doubt that he's like really putting much thought into whether or not these are achievable.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure I did a lot of stuff like that as a kid, but on the other hand, I never like thought of doing like ridiculous schematics like that in like with the mindset of I'm actually going to do this.
Yeah, it really is just him kind of fantasizing, but of course has to keep it realistic, at least for himself, because he's so dependent on logic. Francine throughout this episode is Brain's kind of second in command. She's his I guess, well, she is his accomplice, and also
she's like
the person that he kind of sounds off to, and this is where we kind of get his new cadence as he becomes more villainous. Francine's afraid that he'll become a crazy guy in the school rafters dropping chandeliers on people, and he's like already.
I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, it's a great line, and he's already tinting his fingers, and he's just like, I can't listen to you. I must use all my available brain capacity for plotting revenge.
Which is such a crazy idea. Like, the idea that, like, he literally does not want to allow himself to think about anything else because he's trying. It's like he's some sort of. It's like those old 90s computer space sims where you have to reroute the engines to the shields because you want to put all the energy in the shields. He's trying to do that with his brain, and he's trying to do it for the one purpose of
it's as if his entire body has become some sort of ship that is only fueled by vengeance, by pure vengeance.
He's like this crazy PC gamer that needs to have everything closed to dedicate all of his RAM to like this one game, the game of revenge.
Yeah,
Game of revenge.
And that...
But of course, his eventual solution, which Francine does end up helping him with, because she overhears Muffy kind of talking trash about her thing as well.
What does she say? Is like, she just walks by and all you hear is like, and that shoe thing was stupid or something like that, and immediately Francine's like, I'm on board. Yeah, let's do something to Muffy.
I'm in. Well, and Brain, maybe we're dunking a lot on Brain for having such ridiculous ideas, but he might actually be smarter than it seems, because he actually goes with a psychological plan rather than technological, one that seems to be pretty effective. They decide to leave a love note. We get this great first-person shot. It reminded me of the Doom movie for some reason, of Francine with the like cartoonishly like pink with a heart placing the love note.
I'm just imagining the
Muffy's
Doomslayer
desk.
like putting a love note on I don't know, the desk of Satan or something.
I love how the work in this plan is divided amongst the two of them, because later in the episode we find out that it was Brain that wrote it, because who is it? Is it Fern that approaches Francine? Is that her name?
Yes.
Yeah, Fern approaches Francine, and immediately
Yes,
after she reads Muffy's note, after Muffy believes in it, Fern knows it's a fake, because she says, Brain's the only one who could use regardless properly in a sentence, so it has to be him.
And that...
Which is actually a great piece of continuity, because, James, in the last episode we watched, it was a Fern-centric episode, and it was all about how much she's way into Sherlock Holmes and the power of deduction and stuff like that. So some good continuity with Fern's character. She sort of acts as the detective or foil to the quote-unquote perfect crime that Brain
That is
and
one thing I do
Francine
remember
are trying to
fondly
get
from the
away
show,
with
is
here.
that Fern was always kind of like the junior detective character. She was always into like detective novels, and I think I do the one that you just mentioned, the last episode. I think I do remember seeing that one when I was a kid too, where it's like she's trying to solve a mystery or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of mysteries, so when Muffy gets the letter, we're to believe that she thinks it's genuinely from an admirer, and we get a kind of a look into Muffy's imagination as she's reading the letter out. She kind of pictures her secret admirer as like this playboy rich person, and when Muffy was reading this, it made me realize, like, James, so far in the series, Muffy has like absolutely sucked as a character. Like, by far of all the Arthur characters, she's the most two-dimensional, like, not two-dimensional, excuse me, she's the most one-dimensional. It's literally like snotty rich person. But this little scene here let me know that like the writers are totally in on the joke, because she talks about in the note, it talks about like, oh, like, I admire how rich you are, and how that makes you like
let's
not
talk
care
about this note for a second, because first of all, like, Muffy imagines this as like this studly 30-year-old guy, but let me tell you something, this dude is pretty sexy.
I love that her idea.
That's true.
I love that
Dude,
her idea of like
shredded.
a romantic encounter is that she's like going to her like rich fortune safe and pulling out all of her jewels, and like the other guy comes to his rich fortune safe and pulls out like $1 billion, and then they meet eyes, like as if in the eyes of someone that's rich, like that's the only situation that could be remotely romantic.
The other girls she's reading this to are like pontificating whether the guy is actually younger or older. He's 30 in Muffy's imagination. But someone says that like he couldn't be younger because he wouldn't know how to write. And I'm like, I mean, he could just be in grade 2, you guys. It doesn't necessarily mean he's
when I was in grade 2, I was learning cursive, let alone did I already know how to write.
Yeah. I knew how to write in primary. Like,
I will note the best line from this whole thing. So it's eventually like the narration takes over to her imagined beau, I guess you would say, and he's got this very nice lower register, charming voice, and he likes her smile, her laugh, her lack of concern that comes from extreme wealth.
That's the line I was thinking of. Yeah, that let me know that like the writers are totally in on.
It's almost as if in that love letter they Brain described literally every aspect that he possibly could of her.
Yeah,
character.
Exactly.
Like, I love this, and he listed everything there is.
He played her, man, and I gotta talk about this. So, like, right after Muffy gets done reading it, she enlists the help of Sue Ellen to figure out who her admirer could be in the school. We go to Fern, excuse me, yeah. And
sorry, Fern.
James, the scene that you mentioned earlier with Brain, he's actually talking to Arthur on the playground as they're eating lunch, and he leads into it with this line that, like, I remember to this day, and, like, independent of doing this episode, and he just says, "Have you ever realized how frighteningly easy it is to manipulate someone into doing whatever you want?" And this is where I'm like, this is turning into Death Note.
That line really stuck out to me too.
It's so over the top, and then, like, what Arthur says something in return, right? Arthur's like, "Brain, you're acting kind of weird," and then Brain turns around with, like, it's like he's totally changed his personality. Like, he's got this maniacal look on his face, and he's like,
"Yeah, that's the line I mentioned earlier. Am I?" And he just does this ridiculous maniacal laugh.
It's again the depths of madness that only revenge can mine out of a man's heart, and, like, I just got some serious, like, Light Yagami flashbacks, and I was a little creeped out. I got to be honest.
I was getting some Metal Gear 5 Big Boss vibes from this episode.
You know what? That doesn't surprise me at all. But
I do like, so, like you said earlier, James, Muffy enlists Fern to help her get to the bottom of who her secret admirer is, and we learn that Fern figures it out almost instantly. Like, Fern is as good of a detective as she's always said she is, but we get this great character moment of Fern knows that it's Brain and Francine, like you said, James, just based on the language within the note. But she doesn't let this on to Muffy initially, because she's sort of giving Francine and Brain the chance to come clean by themselves.
Francine is the one who is obviously feeling guilt a lot more, and she has a quick kind of imagination where, for some reason, her and Brain are tried in, like, British court in the 1800s, because they're both on, like, a literal ball and chain and shackles. We've got, like, Binky dressed up as, like, a bobby, like a British, like, security guard, and Ratburn has, like, the white wig on, and he's doing the British accent too, like, it's like, wig. "That's all the evidence I need to hear. Guilty as charged." And Fern kind of lays it all out for them. And Arthur is like the lawyer. He's the barrister with the powdered wig as well. And he's trying, bless him, to do a British accent, and it's not as convincing as Ratburn's. So I just thought that was funny. But on the other side of things, Brain is sliding off the deep end into literal supervillain territory. Like, Francine imagines him as, for some reason, this supervillain with a giant head. So,
this was my favorite part of the whole episode.
Like, at some point, he comes into contact with radiation and gets, like, an even larger head, kind of like the leader from the Incredible Hulk. And he has this plan that involves like a missile or a rocket ship, and it looks like he might, like, blow up Muffy's mansion, but.
This part's kind of like an unveil, and it just becomes more absurd after the unveil. Or, like, we get this, not like a point of view shot, but like an over-the-shoulder shot of this rocket coming all the way to Muffy's house. And you're expecting, like, he's gonna kill her, he's gonna blow up her house, he's gonna destroy her fortune, her family, everything she has. But it just, like, softly lands on the doorstep, and this mechanical arm comes out, rings the doorbell, and it blows up. And she comes out, and she's like, "Huh? No one's here," and goes back in. And Brain's like,
and he's.
Yeah, he launches a Scud missile in order to ding dong ditch her. Like, the whole thing is very Dexter's Lab.
Absolutely.
Like, that level of, like, I'm gonna use all this technological know-how to do this very juvenile thing again. For revenge. But I think the thing that really sells this whole thing is, like you said, Will, this crazy, like, giant-headed Brain. Like you said, he looks like that Hulk villain, or like Brainiac from Superman. It's like he was a me, and you make his face the biggest face possible, his head the biggest head possible, rather.
You make
and
his
then
eyes small. That actually kind of when I saw that, the first thing I thought was the episode of Jimmy Neutron where they make Sheen smart, but his brain keeps getting bigger and bigger, and he gets that kind of features. But this episode that part did give me a Jimmy Neutron vibe as well overall, because like you said, it's like all this ridiculous and super like hyper intelligent scientific technology to achieve a very juvenile outcome, and that's kind of what every episode of Jimmy Neutron is.
And the thing that, I mean, thankfully does it, I kind of said before, like, this is a little scary because we are seeing like literally the darkest side of Brain we've ever seen. But the good thing is that at least a lot, like pretty much all of his plans are pretty low stakes. Like it's not like he wants to hurt Muffy. He just wants to embarrass her or that sort of thing. So that kind of takes a little bit of the teeth out of a lot of what he's thinking and doing.
I was gonna say that's just definitely not how Francine sees it. Like, because what he's doing is relatively harmless. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Muffy thought she had a crush and she doesn't. Oops. But I mean, Francine's really kind of blowing what she thinks is going on completely out of perspective.
I will say, though, that, like, one of the strengths I think this episode has is Brain and Francine isn't a pair we normally see. I like it when Arthur, like, pairs up characters that we don't really see interact that often. But the other thing that we definitely don't normally see is the pairing of evil Brain and Francine. Like, usually Francine's more of an antagonist, so I loved the back and forth from like Francine trying to like talk evil Brain into fessing up. Like, I just really liked the way their characters went together. And it's like you said, James, Francine's much more worried and guilty, wrought with guilt over this whole thing than Brain is. We get this line from Muffy where she's sort of getting mad at Fern for not already figuring out who the culprit is or who left the love letter. Muffy says, if I paid you, I'd be asking for a refund. So we've already gone from her saying, I'm going to hire you as my PI to
I think
she's actually not giving her any money at all.
More than just on a moral spectrum. Because, of course, with the fantasization she has of going into court, she's also really scared of just getting caught and getting in trouble. And Brain's not concerned at all because, again, he thinks too highly of himself. Because I remember there's a scene when Francine approaches him and I think she tries to explain, like, what if we get caught? What if they find out? And Brain says, we're not, because my plan's too foolproof. There's no way we could get caught. Even though, at this point, Fern already knows it's him.
Yeah, it's again, I don't want to reference this to death or anything, but it just reminded me a lot of just like a just as planned moment from Death Note. He's so sure that he's put enough locks and things and that he's 2 steps ahead. I guess it's more of almost like a Moriarty moment. He's so convinced that he's ahead of even someone as smart as Fern that he's basically infallible at this point. Brain thinks that. But eventually they decide that it's gotten a little too far because Muffy comes to them, to Francine and Brain, and says that her secret admirer wrote her another note, which they are completely mystified by because they weren't behind it. And she has determined that her secret admirer is actually one of Lucas and I's favorite characters on the whole show. That would be Rattles.
And this Rattles reveal really raises the stakes. Like, this is what makes evil Brain disappear and he sort of returns to his regular Brain state, is because now, like you said before, Will, so far it's been pretty juvenile. Like, we haven't been expecting harm to befall Muffy from all of this. But Francine says that, and this is kind of crazy, Francine says if Rattles figures out that Muffy's gonna leave a love note for him in return, he's gonna pound her. Which I don't think really makes a lot of sense. That, like, he's
not just pound, but pulverize.
Right, that's
her.
the wording they uses. He's gonna assault this little girl because she wrote him a love note. It's all kind of ridiculous, but of course it's kid logic, so I'm sure it makes sense to them. But it is effective as basically a device from the writers to raise the stakes and make Brain return from evil Brain to normal Brain. And now they have this situation to deal with.
Right, it's all kind of gone downhill at this point, and we've entered a new realm of things that is beyond, petty childhood revenge. So Brain and Francine, although Brain's not super into it, he's agreed that the best thing to do is to come out and apologize. But first, they have to try and get the note back from Rattles' locker so that nothing bad happens to them. They try to break in. Francine has tries to get gum on a string, but it can't fit. Brain tries to use a coat hanger,
Right,
and
right,
again,
right. Oh, now I just want to stop you. Where did he get that coat hanger from? Francine's like, oh, I got gum and string, and it's like, okay, those are things you would have in school. Brain's like, we could try this coat hanger. You could try this car, Jimmy. I brought from home that I used to hijack cars with. Like, why did he have that?
It's almost as if while he was under the influence of evil Brain, he kind of dabbled with that personality and maybe broke into some cars while he was at it.
Oh boy, maybe. I used to have coat hangers to hang up jackets in school. I didn't think too much of it.
Really, I didn't have coat hangers when I was in school. Not even in high school. Like, not in my. Do kids even have? I guess in America, kids probably have lockers. But even when I had a locker in high school, I wasn't hanging anything on hangers. I don't know.
I would in grade 10, I used to put my little winter jacket on top of all the lockers because I couldn't remember my locker combination. And people were like, Lucas, your jacket's going to get stolen. And I was like, listen, bud, if they steal that jacket, they need it more than me.
How magnanimous of you for a 10th grader.
I remember, Lucas, around that time when we were in Scouts together, you had a similar philosophy with I think it was your iPhone.
Yes.
You never had a password on it. And I remember asking you why. And I said, well, if someone steals it, or if someone finds it and you lose it, they're just going to keep it. And you said, hey, if someone found this, good on them. They get an iPhone. I'm not going to get in the way of that.
James, I still don't have a password on my iPhone. Whenever I get a new iPhone or a new iPhone update, it's like, you don't have Touch ID. I'm like, nope. And it's like, you don't have a 4-number password. I'm like, nope. I just want to open that sucker and have it ready to go. Come find my iPhone, Elwood City Limits fans. It's all yours.
You don't have your bank, your social media info on that you don't want people to take?
Hey, I kind of think it's freeing. If someone else wants to take over the identity of Lucas Mancini, I'll go off into the Cayman Islands somewhere, disappear without a trace.
My goodness, I never would have guessed this from Lucas. I mean, Lucas, you're a laid-back kind of guy, but I didn't realize just... I guess the depths of laid-backery that
I think Lucas
hiding.
is just trying to justify how lazy he really
is. I can appreciate that. So yes, coat hangers aside, they aren't successful in getting into the locker in time, and then we get a little bit of
a lot of time on that coat hanger detail.
And we get a little bit of a Jurassic Park cam, everything starts to shake, and we get a little bit of a zoom into Brain. And again, the threat of violence, as Brain says, hold on tight, this is gonna be bad. So Rattles finds them, and they're stammering, trying to explain what they're doing. But then Muffy comes into the frame, and they're afraid she's going to get pulverized, as they said. But then the jig is up. It appears that Muffy hired ? Maybe just asked Rattles. She says she asked him for a favor, I think. Got him to basically go along with this charade so she could draw out the people who made the love note, and that would be Brain and Francine. So they're kind of found out, but Muffy doesn't really hold any ill will.
I thought this was
all in all a very satisfying day.
I thought this was a great twist, because 1, I didn't see it coming, and 2, it explains the Fern factor, because Muffy's like, I knew Fern would know, so I followed her around. So Fern never gave up the goods, so Fern was a good friend to Brain and Francine. But I also like the idea that for all of Brain's evil smarts, Muffy actually outsmarted him in the end. So I thought this was really effective as a twist. And then we get after this, we get the results from the science fair, which shows that Brain was pretty much making much ado about nothing. If you remember, the inciting incident for this whole episode was Brain was mad that Muffy was supposedly bribing the judges with French pastries, but that didn't influence them at all.
I remember they even Mr. Ratburn starts with a pretty misleading line. He says, and the winner, he says something about how it was tasty, or how the project was tasteful, and that really makes you think, okay, duh, it's gonna be Muffy. So Muffy interrupts Mr. Ratburn and stands up and says, well, I've been thinking, and this was one of my favorite parts of the whole episode, when she says, I've been thinking, Brain whispers to Francine, that's new.
Yeah, and he gets this big old smile on his face, I got her.
Yeah, it's even after all of this, after he's learned his lesson, he still has that grudge against her.
Yeah. But yeah, so Muffy tries to, actually, I guess, vacate her winning because she assumes that it went to Brain, who she felt did the better job, as she admits. And then Brain is kind of humbled a little bit here, which I liked. He's just like, Muffy decided to forfeit her win to me. I feel like a rat, which I don't know if that's the right thing to say when you're in earshot of Mr. Ratburn.
I didn't even think of that.
But yeah, there was actually a little bit of setup here. We saw Francine's earlier, which did involve food, and as you said, James, Ratburn's line about it being one of the tastiest displays. Francine wins for her analysis on bad lunches versus school meals, and the episode ends with her telling Brain, "Maybe you just need to learn to cook."
And that's kind of interesting because out of everything you see at that science fair, Francine's is the only one that's kind of like a social commentary on like actions and events rather than just look at this thing I made.
Right, like I was thinking that like after she won, I would think that like Mr. Rapper would be like, now keep that under wraps. We can't have like the newspapers knowing that we're serving you kids like bad food. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of it would be a big news story if this actually happened. Like if a third grader had uncovered that the cafeteria meals were less had less nutritional value than a pair of shoes.
I think it's good that they didn't penalize her for that whatsoever in the episode, because that's a good message for kids. Like, if people are selling you a rotten or not good food, you have every right to call them out on that and try to, like, protest against that. And I think that was, like, a pretty decent message.
I think they might be trying to buy her off.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, Will, is that they gave her the award and they were like, okay, now be quiet.
Yeah, it's hush money.
Now why don't you hand us all that evidence and we'll put it in the furnace room.
That's also a good point.
So who knows? But all the same, Francine did win, and Brain ate a little bit of humble pie. Well, on this episode, there was no word from us kids, so we're going on right to the second story, which is decidedly much different in focus. It's DW Blows the Whistle. This one...
Honestly, though, I'm pretty glad I lucked out with no word from us kids segment, because I think Lucas feels the same way. I do not care about anything any of those kids have to say. So I'm glad we kind of skipped that part and just got more Arthur meat.
I wouldn't necessarily say I feel the same way in that, like, I don't care what the kids have to say, but I will say that, like, watching them back now as adults, they're a word from the kids for the kids. It's definitely skewed towards a younger audience, but something that has been fun about watching the old word from us kids is 1, 90s fashion, 2, 90s computers, and watching the kids, like, they're fun little time capsules. That's, I think, the value in going back and watching them now, but like you said, they aren't the most entertaining thing in the world.
Okay, that is a very good point, because I kind of like stumble upon Arthur on YouTube, but since I can skip those parts, I've actually have not seen those parts since I was a kid, and that's definitely how I felt about them when I was younger. So look, if I did like take the time to watch them now, I probably would appreciate them in the way that you just described.
They're pretty harmless as they go these days. They can be cute sometimes.
Remember the one where the kid with the Boston accent made up the monster and he was like the slinging slasher? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I still get emails about that of just like monster killer smasher.
Can you link me that after we're done this, because I really want to see
that. Was like one of the first episodes we ever watched.
Was it really? Oh, geez. I'm going to have to really figure out which episode that was. But I'll certainly try, James. It is really funny. DW Blows the Whistle. What I was going to say is that this episode starts out hot and heavy.
Oh, man.
Because we're into the Fate of the Furious here.
I remember even this intro as a kid. This might be one of my favorite Arthur openings of all time, because as a kid, like, this was so up my alley. Like, I used to watch all the CGI Hot Wheels movies. That's how much I loved.
I remember those.
That's how much I loved, like, race stuff. Like, and to this day, I still get a kick out of, like, Hanna-Barbera Wacky Races, or like the Speed Racer movie, or like you said, the Fast and Furious franchise. I just love the idea of, like, all the Arthur's characters having their own custom cars, like they're in a Mario Kart game. Like, everybody had a different car, and they're in this, like, Grand Canyon, like, race setting. Like, I really enjoyed this opening as a kid, and I do like how creative it is now as an adult. Like, the fact that everybody has their different car, and it's like this short, albeit exciting race sequence.
They almost look like two dinkies that I had as a kid, so I really appreciated that too. Lucas, you mentioned Mario Kart, but as they're going along, it's Arthur and the Brain in one kind of truck racing Francine and Muffy across this race course, but it has a few like dips and turns. Almost looks kind of desert themed at times, and there's like one where there's a turn where Francine and Muffy like almost run afoul of an elephant. It reminded me a lot more of Diddy Kong Racing.
Or now that you say that, Cruisin' USA, gotta watch out for those elephants. Am I right?
I've never actually played Cruisin' USA, but I was definitely getting more of a Diddy Kong Racing feel than a Mario Kart feel.
In Cruisin' USA, the elephants will poop on your windshield.
Ew.
That sounds like something that was made in the 90s. So as this race goes along, eventually Francine and Muffy kind of spin out a little bit, and Arthur and Brain are getting ahead, but they get pulled over by a police officer on a motorcycle, which turns out to be DW, and they're pulled over, which I thought was the wrong move. Arthur pulls over before, as they're like within like just meters of the finish line, and I was like, just pull over after the finish line. Like, I really don't see what the problem was here. But he abides by the law, and DW kind of writes him up for, like flashing lights, like numbers on the side of the van, and Arthur's like, but this is a race course. And then it just cuts.
Yeah. She says the numbers are too distracting. Like all of these really arbitrary things that you would never have to worry about in a race. And what kind of police cars are in a, like, I'm imagining like a NASA racetrack, not a NASCAR. NASA racetrack, that sounds awesome. But a NASCAR racetrack, like, can you imagine if a police motorcycle pulled into that and started pulling over these race cars?
Now wait a minute, maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but does she not write them up for speeding? Does she like write them up for like the numbers and the lights? She doesn't mention like they were going too fast.
Oh, I don't know. That'd be really funny though.
Yeah, maybe she does throw that in there, but I only watched it an hour ago. You'd think I'd remember. But we get a cut from Arthur's like face saying this is a race course, and then immediately to him and the Brain again, like in the striped prison uniforms, being put behind bars, and with DW walking away going, and obstructing justice.
That was a really good line. I really like that.
And so the whole thing is that Brain's like, I never knew your sister could be so strict. And Arthur's like, yeah, sometimes she gets a little carried away, which is kind of a hint for the episode ahead. We do start off the actual episode with DW, who is at the library getting a talk on safety from one firefighter, Officer Safety.
Yeah, okay, so
if that is his real name.
Lots of questions here, right from the jump. One, I highly doubt this gentleman's God-given name is Safety. I think that's one suspect. Two, he's a firefighter, yet they keep calling him Officer Safety? Like, I don't know if they just didn't want to have two scenes with, like, a cop in a row, or they needed him to be a firefighter for the end of the episode when he shows up again. But, like, why is he Officer Safety? Why isn't he Captain Safety? Like, something that...
Yeah, I feel like it definitely sounds like a road bump that would have come from the writing process, because they probably realized they need that character to be a firefighter. So in the script, they probably called him Officer Safety with the idea that he'll be a police officer, but later on, they're like, oh wait, this guy needs to be a firefighter so he can like get DW out of the tree, which is something that happens like towards the end. So that probably was a change that was made in the animation process. That would be my guess.
Maybe that's true. I never really thought about that. I just figured Officer Safety kind of rolled off the tongue a little better, although Captain Safety, not a bad name either.
Or maybe Deputy Safety. That's a little harder to say, though.
All right. Well, I like that one, too. So what he does after his safety talk is that he gives all of these kids a whistle to wear around their necks, which, like, giving a child a whistle is like giving the Joker a loaded gun. Like, you know what's going to happen from this, and you have
giving
nobody to blame
DW a whistle. Giving DW a whistle, that's like giving the Joker like a nuke.
Yeah, I know. It's just bad news ahead for everybody, and she kind of takes this a little bit too much to heart, and she imagines herself being dubbed Princess of Safety in like this dream sequence where she's in like a medieval castle, and
she's the safety pony.
And I guess what would this be? Bishop Safety gives her her very own safety pony, which is just hideous.
I remember, like, that's something that always struck me as strange as a kid. DW always fantasizes about getting a pony, and I would always see these TV shows that depict young girls wanting a pony, but I didn't know anybody who wanted a pony. Like, neither of my sisters wanted a pony. Like, no girls I knew at school wanted a pony. Like, I don't know what was with, like, cartoon girls and ponies.
That's interesting. I mean,
It's like
I
Jerry,
couldn't tell you. I'm a little bit outside of the gender.
It's like Jerry Seinfeld said, "I hated any kid who had a pony." And the other lady, and what does the woman say? She's like, "I had a pony. What's wrong with having a pony?" Jerry's like,
I remember that.
How was I supposed to know she had a pony?
Yeah, so DW is very much emboldened by this new task to be, as safe as possible and help other people be safe.
DW has a very Judge Dredd like mentality when it comes to enforcing safety. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry, I didn't expect to be talking about Judge Dredd on this Arthur podcast.
Listen,
but
this
you're totally right.
DW's safety whistle is asking the big questions, like how much safety until you lose freedom? How much safety is enough safety? You know what I mean?
So pretty
I
soon,
remember there's a part when the part when her parents even say like, DW, it's good that you're helping people be safe, but that's one thing, and being a tattletale, well, that's another thing.
Well, I have some stuff to say about that. We'll get to that in a second. First of all, though, we see DW actually use her whistle for good when she sees Matthew, and part of my French, I'm gonna pull a phrase from James here. Matthew's bum ass waddling into traffic. This little kid.
She saves his freaking life. He was gonna get killed. He was gonna get what do they say? Pulverized by that car.
to say the least. And this is the one thing of just like, DW got it right. She got it way right using the whistle once, and so now it's that much harder to come down on her when she uses it much more frivolously later on, because it's like, well, you never know, she could save another kid.
Yeah, but that was a good, really good excuse as to why Arthur's parents are both so lenient. They're so hesitant to get irritated with it because, literally just because of that one time.
Right, and I mean, they're pretty lenient with DW where they shouldn't be, but this one's at least a little bit more understandable. So it goes back to the Reed house where Arthur and the Brain are making a
boxcar,
a soapbox racer,
yeah,
a boxcar, yeah. They're making it for a race that's coming up. And DW kind of gets in Arthur's face a little bit by saying that the cart doesn't have seatbelts, which, again, Mom says is actually not a bad point. So hopefully they can put some in. The Ratburn Rally is what they're getting ready for.
I remember the first thing DW says when she sees the car. She just says, "It looks like a pile of junk with wheels." And Arthur gets really mad. Like he is from the get-go, he has no reason to take anything DW says into account, because the first thing she does is just straight up just rip it up. And then she makes, like, a decent point, and Arthur has all the more reason to kind of be a little, like, sour about that, just because she was just so rude about it.
Now, in DW's defense, James, they did make it out of a trash can.
Well, yeah, it does look like a pile of junk. She's right, it does look like a pile of junk with wheels, but you're not going to say that to somebody. That's just mean.
That's true. That is rude. Unless, like you said before, they're making like a Sesame Street kart racer. It does look like what Oscar the Grouch's vehicle.
Yeah, well, I'm not like gonna go up to a hobo and say, "You look like a hobo." Like, he knows that. You don't need to do that.
Yeah, well, it's hard. It can never, I guess, in DW's eyes, it can never rise above the status of a mere garbage can on wheels, which Arthur is fighting hard to try and do. That night, Arthur is in the bathtub. First of all, before we get to what actually happens in this scene, Arthur's playing with a couple of his dinky cars in the bathtub. Playing with your toys in the bathtub, not a great idea. I remember I saw this when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, playing with my toys in the bath, like, is probably the best time ever. And then it just got my toys wet, and I was like, oh, this isn't fun. I don't want these toys to get wet.
That was strange that he was playing with, because when I was a little kid, I had bath toys. Like, I had a rubber, I literally had the classic rubber duck, and I had, like, this Sesame Street a wheel thing where, like, you put the wheel by the tap, and then the tap would spin the wheel. And so I had bath toys, and I remember seeing cartoon children playing with their normal toys in the bathtub. Like, even as a kid, that was just such a foreign concept to me. I just thought that was like really strange.
I liked how
me too.
Arthur was like, he's like speaking to himself in these little like acting out voices, and it's like he's acting out Death Race 2000 or something in his bathtub, because he's like, the cars are like crashing into each other, and he's like, oh no, the bubbles, like for some reason.
Oh no, look at all those bubbles.
Yeah.
Ah! Glub, glub, glub.
The driver of like one of the cars gets the bends or something. Like, it's very grotesque what's happening in his imagination. But this is where
speaking of, not to interrupt you, but speaking of grotesque, one of the first things I noticed is that the water in the bubbles are both brown. What did he do to that tub?
I thought, maybe it was my monitor, or maybe I'm colorblind, but I thought they were more of a pinkish hue. But maybe Arthur's buying one of those crazy lush bath bombs that are like brown, so
maybe
that's why
it's like chocolate scented or something.
So this is where things start to take a turn. Up to this point, DW has made. Basically, she saved a really dumb kid's life from waddling into traffic, and she's also made some pretty, like, well thought out safety concerns regarding Arthur's boxcar not having seatbelts. But this is where she starts to go mad with power, a la Judge Dredd, where she starts to like. Arthur could hear from the bathroom DW blowing the whistle incessantly at things that really don't need to have a whistle blown at them. Arthur's mom is reading a magazine without gloves, and so she's saying that's not safe. She's going to get a paper cut. There's a bunch of other things that she keeps blowing the whistle at. She says
the one thing that I remember specifically is that Arthur even criticizes DW for saying this. She said something about Pal not using the hand railing when he went down the stairs. Like Pal's a dog. He doesn't have hands. He can't do that.
Lucas, your Judge Dredd comparison is pretty much spot on, but at this point, DW is becoming more like Judge Death, where it's like, living is unsafe, therefore all life is unsafe, and she's blowing the whistle at everything. She even blows the whistle on Arthur in the bathtub because he's not wearing a personal flotation device.
Oh my lord.
DW, and Photoshop a DW with the Judge Dredd helmet. I am the law.
I could do that. That could be like the thumbnail. That would be pretty easy to do. Dude,
I would love it. I would absolutely
love
it.
I'll get on that right after this.
Please and thank you. So it turns out that not just the Reed family are being terrorized by DW's whistling. Arthur's friends are getting the wrong end of the whistle as well. Muffy, I believe she said that DW told her that long hair is what was it? Some sort of hazard?
Yeah, long hair is unsafe. My favorite was Binky's, who, oh my god, I love Binky so much. Binky's like, yeah, I got in trouble for saying hi to her. She said I shouldn't talk to strangers, which I think it's so genius that they didn't show us this scene. It lets our imagination fill in the blanks. Because in my head, like, this interaction is just so funny. Like, Binky walking down the street being like, hi, DW, and DW's like, you cannot talk to me. Do not talk to strangers. She, like, blows the whistle at him. Like, it's funny. It's funny to think about.
Yeah, and you're right. That is all it needs. Also, they're talking about this while building an elaborate domino installation. Like you do with your friends, I suppose.
Brain keeps his vengeful streak going because he's the one who comes up with the idea of catching DW in the act.
You're right. I didn't realize that.
Unsafe. Yeah.
Listen. He's got to get it out somehow. And this is a relatively safe way to do it.
Brain might just be tainted for the rest of the series.
Oh no! Like this is going to color all of our future interactions with the Brain, but we'll have to keep it in mind. So they set up an elaborate sting to catch DW, which involves them at like certain points and communicating through Bionic Bunny walkie-talkies.
That was a little consistency I always loved. Is that they always use those like big clunky Bionic. But specifically the Bionic Bunny walkie-talkies anytime they need to, like, do something like that. Like, and every episode.
And the Bionic Bunny binoculars, which we've seen in a couple episodes as well. We get some fake James Bond music to open up this sting. And then also, you mentioned the Bionic Bunny walkie-talkies, the Bionic Bunny binoculars. You know, some things kids would have, and if they wanted to do a stakeout, they would use. And also a security van, like an FBI-style multi-monitor surveillance van that I guess Muffy's rich, so she'd be able to buy it. But it was like something out of The Wire. Like they have eyes in all these locations and direct video feed of like everywhere that DW plans to go. I thought that was funny. I thought them tailing DW, it reminds me of, and maybe I just had video games on the brain because we have James on this episode, but it reminds me of the France mission in MGS4 where you got to follow that guy around.
Yeah, I remember that in the European streets at night.
Yes.
Yeah, Muffy and Francine in the surveillance van with Przybylewski trying to get the tap on DW, and so they're trying to catch her doing something unsafe. But it doesn't really happen. She finds an ice cream cone on the ground and puts it in a garbage can where Arthur was just so happened to be hiding. So we get a great image of Arthur with a cone sticking out of his face.
That was almost like a bait and switch. At least it was for me, because I thought that was going to be the thing she does that was unsafe. I thought she was going to pick that cone up and eat it. That's what I thought she was going to do. And then I thought everyone was going to have an opportunity to blow the whistle, be like, that's not safe. You could get sick from that. But no, that was a pretty good way of handling that. Where she picks it up, it's like, this isn't safe. Like, it really goes to show that she still has safety on the brain, even when she's just out and about, minding her own business. Picks up that cone, puts it in the trash can, and we get that little comedic shot of Arthur popping out with the cone on his head. And
Arthur's afraid that she'll eventually like deem everything to be unsafe, and he has an imagination of her at the Ratburn Rally. Which for my money, it looks way more epic in Arthur's imagination than it actually turns out to be. It's like he's imagining it as like this twisting course on this like treacherous mountain, and like Mr. Ratburn has like a starter pistol to get it going. But then DW called in the authorities to safety up the Ratburn Rally. And she comes in with like a megaphone and everything, which is Arthur's worst nightmare, I'm sure. And then basically turns it into a neutered version of what it is. Like, instead of two boxcars racing down this slalom, they now have to pull themselves to the finish line, and all of their like they've been safety-fied, essentially, their boxcars.
We get some great visual humor. I always love a good snail gag where these two snails are passing the cars to show how slow the cars are going. Yeah, and they go, "This is my kind of race." And then I think DW even like starts getting mad at the snails and saying
she tells them to slow down
fast.
with the megaphone. I thought that was really good.
And she even replaced Mr. Ratbird's starter pistol with like a little pop gun, and he looks super tired, which I thought was great. But Arthur reassures his friends that she won't be at the Ratburn Rally. Cut to, what do you mean you want me to take DW to the race?
Like the immediate payoff.
And yeah, that's what's up, is that Mom and Dad say that Arthur have to bring DW to the race because only he can take care of her tomorrow while they go out or some such. But they are very insistent that DW not blow the whistle and not bother Arthur. And right before we change scenes, we get this awesome mean mug from Arthur, complete with like musical sting of like, you better not.
So this is what James was talking about earlier about Arthur's parents being like, hey DW, you're starting to be a tattletale. And I was like, hell yes. Arthur's parents are not down with stitches. Snitches get stitches, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't go snitching on your brother. Like, let's chill out with all the snitching. It's kind of weird because you'd think like a kid's show, no matter what, it would always just be like, yes, be a tattletale. Like, tattle all the time. That's usually the kind of mentality a kid's show has. So I appreciated, much like how Recess looks down upon Randall for just snitching 24/7, Arthur's parents taking a stand and being like, listen, there's being safe and then there's being a filthy snitch, and nobody likes a snitch.
Well, Lucas, you may remember, and James, we had an episode recently where Arthur kind of cut his knee and was very reluctant to tell his parents.
That was my favorite episode as a kid. Yeah, when he goes to the junkyard and cuts his knee on like a can or something. Arthur's knee is what it's called, isn't it?
That's right,
Yeah.
and that was a recent episode of ours, and the whole message of that was that DW got Arthur to tattle on himself, and that was kind of the instance of when tattling is good. But you're right, Lucas. This is the exact opposite of like nobody likes a snitch.
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line that I think Arthur is really good at making clear. Like, when is it good to do it, and when should you really just keep your mouth shut?
So it is the day of the Ratburn Rally, and Arthur really gets up in DW's face of just like stay over there and like stay out of our business. Don't blow the whistle. It's a little bit mean. It's very severe, but he is very anxious about the havoc that DW could wreak. By the way, hey, thanks for dressing up for the occasion, Mr. Ratburn. You know, it's only a rally that was named after you, but you come over here like you just woke up.
I wrote down the same thing. It's weird seeing Mr. Ratburn in street clothes. Like, he's rocking the classic white tee, and on anybody else in this show, it would look that weird, but because we're used to seeing Mr. Ratburn in his patented green and yellow suit, he looks really, like, casual with just a white t-shirt on.
That's something I didn't even notice, because, yeah, I don't know, that didn't even strike me as anything. I didn't even notice that, but you're right, you're completely right.
I think he looks a little too casual, Lucas. This is like what I wear to bed in the winter. This is like kicking back on a Saturday. Oh yeah, I've got me some Sonic Mania to play. So let me just veg out here and eat some breakfast. Kind of woobs that I'm wearing.
So speaking of video game references, Arthur sends DW away, and she immediately uses some Ubisoft logic and is like, I gotta climb the tallest thing to get a better view.
Right, because she can't see for all the crowd. She wants to be able to see the races so that if anybody is unsafe. But in turn, she is the one doing the unsafe thing as she climbs this huge spruce tree or whatever type of tree it is, and gets to the very top and is like hanging on with her entire body. And as it kind of sways, it's a little nerve-wracking, especially when you pair it up with. There's one of the races that they do involves like a kid who made a go-kart that looks like a biplane. And then,
another thing that reminded me about Diddy Kong Racing was that kid with the biplane go-kart.
That's right. And so how it goes, the actual Ratburn Rally track is that it's one hill kind of going down. There's like one drop and then there's a finish line at the end. And so this kid, like his cart is falling apart and everybody's like, like, oh no, something bad's going to happen. But then it stops right as it goes to like the dip in the road. Everybody's like, oh, and it's a
almost
little
as if it's almost as if like showing like this is the worst that's gonna happen. Your car's gonna fall apart and stop.
Yeah, but it's a little nerve-wracking. I gotta be honest with you.
Absolutely. I was kind of like clenching my teeth, being like, oh no, this kid's gonna get hurt.
But eventually, DW calls for help, and Arthur is. I mean, everybody's very surprised. Muffy goes for help, and they do call the fire department. And who saves DW from the tree but Officer Safety himself? A little bit of coming back around there, and as they get her down and the fire trucks kind of disappear, that's when Mom and Dad finally make the scene again. And conveniently enough, they missed everything. So Arthur tries to kind of play it off and say, like, oh, some girl got stuck in a tree. And
like
Mom's
I said before, I love that Arthur didn't snitch. This is another like example of like, even though Arthur was mad at DW earlier, he feels bad for her. He feels like he doesn't want her to get her in trouble. And like I said before, good on Arthur for being like, I'm not going to snitch on my sister. It was some girl. But
yeah.
like you said with DW getting Arthur to snitch on himself, DW sort of learns the same lesson in this episode where she's the one who comes clean and says, it was me. I was the girl who climbed up the tree.
One thing I noticed that like really struck me as weird is like there's at least one fire truck there and there are firemen there, and the parents come over, they're like big smiles on their face, not concerned whatsoever. What's all the commotion about, guys?
And Lucas, I will bring this up here again. Back to Arthur's knee. That James, where we discovered that it's a little bit out of continuity, because in Arthur's Knee, which did air before this, technically, DW mentions the time that she got stuck in the tree and she kind of tattled on herself, which is the impetus for Arthur to tell. So this is it. This episode did take place technically in the timeline before Arthur's Knee, because this is where DW tells on herself. So it was Arthur not snitching on her that gave her the idea for that episode. So interesting how that works, eh?
That is very interesting.
Arthur's parents very worried about DW, but then it's Arthur's time to get in the go-kart, which still looks pretty much the same. They went with that same design, and they're going to be facing Muffy and Francine, except...
Now, did you see Muffy and Francine's go-kart? Did you only see it for like a split second in the corner of the screen, but it looks like Muffy just bought an F1 car. Like, it doesn't... Like... Arthur's and Brain's looks handmade. It's made out of a trash can. Muffy's just looks like a literal, like, not even a go-kart, but a Formula One race car that she purchased. I'm like, oh, these guys are about to get creamed.
I did not even notice that. That's awesome.
Well, and I think they're destined to win as well, Muffy and Francine, just simply because of the fact that Arthur and Brain's cart is a one-seater, but Muffy and Francine are going down together, so they're going to have more weight.
And an engine, supposedly.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them.
I remember earlier in the episode, Brain's talking about how he's like optimizing it to be as aerodynamic as possible. As I'm looking at that trash can, I'm thinking that's the opposite of aerodynamic.
You need to draw some fins on there to lower wind resistance.
You need to like get a hammer and kind of smash it into a shape that's like remotely aerodynamic, but they don't do anything to it whatsoever.
Yeah, that would have actually been not a bad idea. They certainly could have tried that. And the episode ends where Arthur's about to go down. DW notices that his helmet strap isn't on. She goes to blow the whistle, but decides against it, and then just comes up to him, whispers in his ear, and he appreciates the fact that she noticed. And I'll just note here that it wasn't a starter pistol that Mr. Ratburn used, as Arthur assumed he would. It's actually just a green flag. And they go down the hill, and who wins? We'll never know. And that's the end of that episode. All right, so this is the part in our episode of this podcast where we talk about the stories that we watched and what we thought of them. James, if you don't mind, I would love to hear your thoughts on Love Notes for Muffy.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good episode. It definitely highlighted parts of Brain's character that I haven't watched all the episodes before this one, but based on what you guys have been saying, really seems like we got to see an aspect of Brain that we didn't get to yet. And I always love it when you see a new side of a character, especially when it's a character that's very, like, set in stone, what their deal is, and kind of who they are, and then, boom, they just kind of throw something new about them at us. So, out of the two, that was the one I definitely thought was more interesting, because it was kind of more focused outside of Arthur's family circle, because a lot of episodes are either about DW or Arthur, but this one was focused on, like, well, I'm saying this, you guys probably have more credit for, like, saying that than I do, because I haven't watched all the episodes, but that's basically like what I remember. But I always really liked it when an episode focused on one of, or maybe more than one of, Arthur's friends, like entirely. I remember Binky had a couple of good episodes too. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Lucas.
I echo a lot of the same things James said. I think Brain's crazy over-the-top performance really carries this episode. Like, if it was the Brain that we had seen in previous episodes where he's like, oh, like, some of the things I've been critical of Brain in previous episodes is that the writers kind of play him like Sheldon Cooper or something. It's like kind of a boring character. But I love this direction of this, oh, like I said, maniacal, vengeful Brain who's, like, so consumed by revenge he can't even realize that, like, his whole plot is falling around him. And I also really liked that they put Francine in the role of sort of the person with the guilty conscience who wants to do the right thing. I think that's really redemptive for Francine because she's usually been the antagonist in a lot of episodes prior. I think it's a really funny episode, and I really like the twist ending that Muffy, like, figured out their whole plot the whole time. I think this episode's really true to all the characters. Like, I think Fern, even though she's got a pretty minor role, it fits her character. The fact that she figures it all out instantly, but she doesn't want to basically blow up Brain and Francine's spot because she wants to teach them a lesson. I thought this was a really entertaining episode.
So not to, well, I will tip my hand for kind of both of these. I was kind of a bit more middle of the road on both of them, but that's not to say that there weren't positive aspects to both episodes, and I definitely think that the stronger of the two is Love Notes for Muffy. I thought I agree with what you said, James, and I think we kind of talked about it a lot, is that just the aspects of Brain's character that you would almost never get to see if it weren't for this particular situation, I thought was really interesting, funny, and kind of creepy at times. But I like that. I like that it was kind of a different way than you would want to go with, your typical nerdlinger, brainy character in a kids show. I liked a lot of the variations on the imaginations that a lot of the kids had in this episode. I thought those were a lot of fun, and of course I love it when we get to use Rattles for basically anything, although I regret he didn't have as good a line as "you old con artist," but maybe on the next go around we'll have
At least he didn't beat up a bunch of little children, which is what was implied he might do.
That's very true. I'll just quickly say about DW blows the whistle. Kind of middle of the road on this one. I thought it was okay. There were a couple of things about it I thought were funny. Actually, what I think is more funny is Lucas's Judge Dredd comparison. I'm still kind of laughing at that. The whole thing, it's like, they kind of came up with this conceit of like DW with a whistle and obsessed with safety, which isn't, of course, out of DW's character, but it's like, okay, we kind of invented this thing for this one-off episode, for her to kind of learn a lesson, and all right, so we're kind of done with this after this one. So it doesn't really feel like it means a whole lot. There's nothing wrong with it. I just kind of didn't do a whole lot for me, especially when we kind of had talking about a similar-ish issue in the episode Arthur's Knee, which I thought was done a lot better. But nothing wrong with it at all. Lucas, what you think of DW Blows the Whistle?
I actually think I liked DW Blows the Whistle more than both of you guys did. Like, I actually really enjoyed both these episodes. I thought they were both really solid Arthur episodes, but I actually think I liked DW Blows the Whistle a little bit more than Love Notes for Muffy, and it might be just it might just be nostalgia clouding my mind, because I do consider this one of those like classic Arthur episodes. I have the imagery of like DW at the top of that giant tree like tattooed onto my brain, but I don't know, I really get a kick out of like the DW character, so her sort of terrorizing the house with her Judge Dredd-esque safety rules. I got a really big kick out of that, and I always like Arthur in the role of these DW episodes as he's just kind of like a stooge, or like just sort of a side character who's comic relief for DW, and so I like Arthur in that role. I'm also a sucker for all the race stuff, like I said off the top, so the idea of like, I remember as a kid watching this episode, I wanted to build a boxcar and all that stuff. It turns out it's really complicated unless you have a kit or something, like to build axles and stuff, so I never got to do it myself, but I always really liked the race aspect of this episode, even though it's just kind of the setting for it. So I really do enjoy DW Blows the Whistle, and I do like how it all comes to a head, and that it's got continuity with Arthur's Knee.
James.
I'm gonna go with you, Will, on this one. I definitely thought it was a more middle of the road episode. Wasn't great, wasn't bad. I definitely think the message of this one is a little bigger than the actual entertainment value. So I think it's a good episode for that. I think it teaches good stuff for kids. But as like a entertainment piece, I definitely got to go with the other episode.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of our own episode here after all. Thanks a lot for joining us for this. Okay, so James, I gotta ask here, and hopefully won't be breaking any rules here, but can you let me in on what the next Nitro Rad video is going to be?
Oh no! I'm doing a video on Eternal Darkness. This is not news. Everyone, a lot of people who follow me on Twitter usually know what the next video is going to be about, probably like a week beforehand. But no, I'm done playing the game, done the script, done recording. I'm all just in the editing process now. I still got to record like the on-screen bits when you see me talking about it. Probably will do that tomorrow or the next day. But yeah, Eternal Darkness. That's what's coming up.
I love Eternal Darkness.
Same here. I don't love the guy who made it though.
Oh, Dennis Dyack. No,
Lucas, I think you and I were talking about this the day you were over here.
Will, if you want, look up the many, like, oh man, Dennis Dyack is a guy who's done a lot of shady stuff in the video game industry, between suing Epic Games and
suing Epic Games is the most infamous one, but he's done a couple of other shady things. He tried to do this thing where he pitched this idea of, like, no news outlets ever, not IGN, not GameSpot, not Giant Bomb, nobody should ever get to see a game before it's done. And that's a really stupid philosophy.
Yeah, no kidding. I've definitely heard that name in not so great context, so I'll have to look up the whole thing. All right, I'm really excited. I loved your Evil Within video, and
Thank you.
I've had great fun since I discovered your channel, going back and watching your Halloween reviews. I love it when a channel gets all Halloweeny. That's one of my favorite things.
I love to get Halloween, not so much Christmas, but Halloween is my biggest, most favorite time of the year, so I always like to do Halloween stuff.
Sweet.
Hey guys, thanks James for coming on. It was a blast having you on this episode. So much so, I feel like this happens every time we have a guest. Will, we went a little bit long this time, so I won't be able to stick around for the outros. I have to head out. Will, I'll send you the audio file, and you want to get James to do the outro quote. But thanks for hanging out, guys. James, thanks for being on the podcast. But
Thanks
I gotta head
me.
out.
All right, so James, we'll make this one quick. So, of course, in case anybody doesn't know by now, please feel free to plug anything that you like.
Well, basically, I guess Nitro Rad is the YouTube channel I host. We kind of already mentioned what it was. It's just I want to say typical run-of-the-mill, but, I feel it has a little more personality than some of them out there. But yeah, I just do game reviews, stuff like that. I try to make it a little more casual. I actually, one thing I do about my videos is I intentionally put in a lot of verbal garbage. I write like a script, and when you write a script, it's very like polished. It's not really the way you speak, so I really insert a lot of words between lines when I'm actually reading it. I put a lot of likes, I put the word dude in there, or drop the word rad a lot, of course, is something I've been trying to do more recently. But yeah, that's what I do, and if you want to see that and hear more of my voice, check it out on youtube.com, search Nitro Rad, and you'll find me right up on there. And
you're also on Twitter as well.
Oh, yes, you can follow me, same as my YouTube username, just Nitro Rad, one word.
All right, and
it's one word in the handle, two words in the. Well, actually, I'm James is like the Twitter username, but the handle is at Nitro Rad.
Right, and you also have Garanicore is your other channel.
Garanicore is our secondary channel. That's more of like a for fun thing, because not a whole lot of people watch it. But my friends Alex, Brady, and Brandon will get together sometimes and just do sketch comedy videos. We did a Dragon Ball Z one recently where Brandon wishes everybody was Dende, and then a couple of years later, Brady's trying to find the Dragon Balls again to try and wish himself back, and horrible things happen from then on. I thought it was a really good one.
Garanicore is really funny. You guys should check it out. That's Gaраnikor. And finally, James, I believe you also have a Patreon as well.
Yeah, I have a Patreon for my YouTube channel. Again, just Nitro Rad. And that went so well, I was actually able to quit my retail job, and now I'm doing Nitro Rad full time.
Hooray! Congratulations! I remember seeing that on Twitter, so that's got to be a great feeling.
It is a great feeling. Being able to put so much time into videos, I'm able to get videos out so much more frequently and put a lot more time and effort and really make them better and not like bigger, but really get that refined quality into them. And I also get like a tighter, more frequent upload schedule, and that's just been fantastic.
Right on. So if you want to keep Nitro Rad's videos going, then I would highly recommend you donate to his Patreon. Okay, so here's the ways that you can find Elwood City Limits online. Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. On Twitter, @ECL Podcast. ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com. You can send us emails anytime at ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com. If you'd like to follow Lucas and I on Twitter, I am... Gosh, what am I on Twitter? I always...
You don't know your own Twitter handle.
No, well, not off the top of my head. Okay, so my Twitter handle is at WSY On Air. I really have to change that because I'm not on air anymore, but WSY On Air. And Lucas is at Lucas_Mancini. Finally, the ways you can listen to this show online. You can go to our main site, elwoodcitylimits.libsyn.com. That's Libsyn. We are also available on Apple Music under podcasts, so please give us a rating and review over there. Or you can also find us on the Google Play Store. All right, James. Well, unfortunately, you won't be joining us next week. But hey, the invitation is open whenever you'd like to come back. Really enjoyed having you, getting to know you a little bit. And yeah, you are welcome back on this podcast anytime, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time doing this. I think this is a great idea for a podcast. Just watch an episode of a TV show that's like highly cherished, a lot of people love, and then just talking about it. I saw a couple other podcasts do stuff like this for like Archie and whatever, but I think Arthur is something that's really like uncharted territory when it comes to podcasts. I don't really see a lot of people talk about Arthur, yet I see a lot of love for Arthur. So I think this podcast is a really important thing.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, so next week, Lucas and I are going to be back, and we may have another special guest on our hands. You'll have to wait and see. It's going to be Francine Redecorates and Arthur the Loser. All right, so one more time for myself and Lucas, we wish you good night. James, you have any final words?
Thanks for watching. Thanks for having me on here, and yeah, it's about it.
All right, for myself, Lucas, and Nitro Rad, we will see you next time on Elwood City Limits.